जीवनम तस्मै ब्रह्मानंदात्मने नमः। ब्रह्मानंदात्मने नमः। वेदोदधिं समनमथ्य ज्ञानरत्नं समोहधृतं येन तस्मै वसिष्ठाय गुरुणां गुरवे नमः। वशिष्ठ जी भगवान की जय। सद्गुरु भगवान की जय। सच्चिदानंद भगवान की जय। शब्द ब्रह्म की जय। सरस्वती महारानी की जय। योग वशिष्ठ जी भगवान की जय। हरि ओम। We are discussing the dialogue between Vashistha ji and the best student, qualified student, Ram. Vashistha ji told to Rama when he was doing austerities on the Ganga bank near Mount Kailash, along with other ascetics. Lord Sadasiva was much pleased on him, and he appeared in form before Vashistha ji. Vashistha ji worshipped him with whatever flowers and other things he had with him, and he prostrated before him, and he worshipped Lord Shankar wholeheartedly. Shankar ji was very much pleased on Vashistha. So Vashistha had the chance to ask Lord Shankar, "Oh Lord, please tell me the method of worship, how the Lord should be worshipped." Lord Shankar was very much pleased, and he answered to Vashistha ji, asking the first question to Vashistha. "Oh great, knowledgeable man, you are very, very intelligent, and you are very, very knowledgeable man. You know everything. Now tell me, what do you understand by God? What do you understand by God? God is neither Lord Shankar, nor the creator Brahma, nor the protector Lord Vishnu, nor other gods, just as the Indra, the king of gods, and other gods. They are not real gods. They are worshipped by some objects, and they are demigods. They are not real gods. God is He who is beyond all this visible world, that is, names and forms, and which is beyond even mind and speech. God in Sanskrit, Deva. Deva means the effulgent one. So all these demigods, they are of course gods because they are more powerful than the earthly beings, and they control some of the subtle management of the nature. So they are called gods. There are 33 lakhs, millions, 33 millions of gods are there. Everywhere there will be some god who is handling some supernatural power and controlling the nature. In this way, many gods are there, but they are not the real God, which is self-effulgent. God means effulgency, and the Supreme God is self-effulgent, the source of all the knowledge and the substratum for everything. He is the causeless cause. He is eternal, without any beginning and end. He is continuous. He is all pervading and all knowing and all powerful. So that God should be worshipped and not all these little gods. Because as you act, so you reap the result. If you worship the demigods, less powerful gods, you will get the result accordingly. So the wise man never goes to worship these demigods, but he worships the highest supreme truth, who is the overall controller of the innumerable universes. So one should worship the highest truth as the supreme God. In order to get rid of all the problems of the world. World means a problem. Wherever you go, whatever you do, because of relativity, you are in the dualistic world. So whatever you get, the opposite of it is always there. So if you get little happiness, the unhappiness also is waiting for you. If you are enjoying the daylight, of course, after some time you have to get darkness of night. So this world is Dualistic world, it is constituted by pairs of opposites. Where there is good, there is bad. Where there is height, there is lowness. Wherever there is something, the opposite also will be there because it is relative world. Relativity starts when two is there. But the absolute one, the absolute singularity, one without a second, is absolute bliss, where oneness is there, there is no opposite of it. So the clever people perceive the highest truth. Now, question comes how to worship him when he is beyond all the mind, speech, and actions and reactions, then how he can be worshipped? So Lord Shankar explains he should be worshipped by discriminative power. Discriminative power means intellect which decides which is eternal and what is momentary. When you decide perfectly well what is momentary and what is eternal, then naturally you give up the momentary objects because it will yield the result which is of dualistic result. Happiness with unhappiness, good luck with bad luck. So one should not accept these mundane objects which is transitory. One should always accept the eternal object, that is the matter which matters, other matters not. That is the highest matter, only matter. So when you have discriminative knowledge, you accept the eternal truth and you worship it by acceptance of the truth. The other method is by feeling, feeling of or experience of one Lord in all these relative names and forms. Mamata Sarvabhutata, one who sees the one truth, all pervading eternal truth in all beings. He worships the highest truth. So, experience of one God in all these names and forms is his worship. And the third way is equilibrium of the mind. When mind gets one-pointed, without any actions, without any breathage, no movement of mind, then one enjoy the equilibrium state, and that state is the state of the absolute truth, absolute silence, absolute balanced state, and that is called sama. Sama means equanimity. And that is when you achieve that, that itself is the state of the absolute truth. So that is called worship of the absolute truth. That is the highest worship. And that is possible in meditation only. Meditation and samadhi. Meditation means steadiness of the mind, where mind never moves at all, absolutely constant, steady, and that state is known as meditation, and that also is known as equilibrium state, where mind never moves. So that is the worship of the absolute. When you meditate, there is no time, there is no space, there is no causation. So that is the worship of the absolute truth. In these ways, of course, to say it is different three ways, but it is one and the same thing. That is to say, one pointed mind, steady mind. That is the worship of the highest Lord. Somebody has asked, when God is almighty and all knowing, omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, then where is the question of directions, east and west and north or south, all these directions? What is the meaning of it? Really speaking, all these directions or anything you think or any names and forms you imagine in relative world, that is only relatively understood, that has got nothing to do with the absolute truth. The truth is beyond all these. So there is no directions. It is all pervading. So there is no question of directions or your names and forms like east and west and north and south. All these are not there. So once mind is unpointed, enters into meditative state, no question of all these. There is no such question. All these directions are only considered in the relative world, our day-to-day life, when we move or do some actions. Then we have to see in which direction you are walking or where are you going and what are you doing. All these questions are in the relative world. In absolute truth, all these subjects are not at all found. Nothing to say, nothing to doubt, no question, no answers. So in this way, our the great kind Lord Shankarji explained the method of worship to the great ascetic, the great Guru Vashistha. Then he says, हे महर्षि प्रकाशमान आत्मदेव की समबोध आदि पुष्पों से ही पूजा की जाती है, उसी को आप देवार्चन जानिए, मूर्ति पूजा को देवार्चन मत जानिए. He said, O Vashist, these worship of forms and names are not called worship. And the real worship is real flowers or the experience of the truth and the equilibrium of your mind. That are the flowers to worship the highest God, and all other worship is not real worship. जो मनुष्य आत्मज्ञान रूप देवार्चन छोड़कर कृत्रिम पूजनों में ही आसक्त रहते हैं, वे चिरकाल तक क्लेश ही पाते हैं. One who gives up the worship of absolute truth and worship the little objects or demigods with less power or less capability, he suffers the whole life. हे ब्रह्मन, जो वेदित तत्व संत महात्मा किसी समय आत्म समाधि से व्युत्थित होकर साकार देव पूजन करते हुए पाए जाते हैं, वे बाल क्रीड़ा के सदृश आनंदार्थ ही साकार पूजन करते हैं, न कि कृत्रिम भोगों की अभिलाषा से. Sometimes it is seen that the great wise people also worship the little gods with names and forms. How it is then? Why do they worship such gods? So Lord Shankar explains, Vashist, when the great people come down from the state of nirvikalpa samadhi, absolute equilibrium, when they come to normal mental state, sometimes they pass time by playing like youngsters, just as the children play meaninglessly and without any expectation. Just they go on playing in sandy beach, doing everything, but there is no purpose. It is their play. Similarly, the great wise people, they also pass time sometimes by worshipping these demigods to set some examples before the society so that other people may start their spiritual journey by worshipping. So the question will arise, why do they worship in this way the demigods? Why don't they set some example of worshipping the highest God? The ordinary people will worship the demigods, because the idealism set by the wise people is like this. So you have to understand, as long as we are in the dualistic world, we are under the clutches of mind, action and reaction theories, or the relative world. People who cannot go beyond all these, they have to start with such worship in initial stage. Just as a student starts his educational career from LKG, KG, first form, second form, then when time comes, slowly, gradually, he reaches such state where he does researches, he gets a doctorate certificate, he becomes a doctor. But is it possible for him without going through the initial stages? So naturally, the ordinary people who has no idea of the absolute truth, they have to start with worship to demigods with names and forms. So the wise people set such examples for the neophytes, for the beginners, one who wants to know the highest truth. They have to go slowly, gradually in the spiritual field. And they do it meaninglessly, purposelessly, without any expectation, just to pass time, just to set some example before the ordinary people. आत्मा ही प्रकाशमान देव, छह प्रकार के ऐश्वर्य से परिपूर्ण शिव और परम कारण स्वरूप है। ज्ञान रूप पूजन सामग्री से उसी की सर्वदा अविच्छिन्न रूप से निरंतर पूजा करनी चाहिए। In reality, one should worship that self-effulgent absolute truth at all time, who has all the wealth. That means he is the Lord of Lords, who is the Lord of innumerable creations. He has all the power. That's why we call him the omnipotent. He has all the powers. So these six types of wealth he has. So one should worship that absolute state of equilibrium. Shiva. Shiva means quietness. Sant. That means absolute calmness, equilibrium, or silence. That is to be worshipped. and that is to be perceived by knowledge. Knowledge means experiential knowledge. We have two kinds of knowledge. The worldly knowledge is always changeable and it always grows, it enhances with experience. All these worldly knowledge is called relative knowledge or informative knowledge, which is not perfect in every sense. It is ever growing because as long as we are alive, we go on accumulating information. Till the end of this life, we go on enhancing our such relative knowledge till the end. So this knowledge is not real knowledge, it is informative knowledge. We collect only information by the association of the senses with the sense objects. That's how we collect information. And this knowledge that is acquired by the senses, by the command of the mind, this knowledge is not a true knowledge. It changes all the time and it is haphazard. And the other knowledge is experiential knowledge, which cannot be expressed by language or by speech. That is beyond speech and mind. That is experiential knowledge. Just as you taste the honey, your taste what you experience. That cannot be expressed. If you want to express it, then you have to take the help of language, which is always faulty. Language is not perfect always. Language has indicative meaning. It is never direct meaning. It has no direct meaning. So expression is always a mixture of your language and other processes. So whatever you express, it is not fully correct. It is not perfect. But whatever you have experienced, that is perfect. That experience is similar in everybody. That's how that experiential knowledge is all pervading. If 100 people taste honey, the experience of all those 100 people will be similar. But when they want to express it, how does honey taste? They will express it differently. That's why it is said, truth is one, but the seers of the truth, they express it in many different ways. But the experiential truth is always similar in every case. That is what he says. The absolute truth is perceived by the experiential knowledge. That means you have to experience the truth. That means you are one with the truth. That is called union with the absolute. Union. You are one with it. And that is real worship. And that should be done all the time without any break. continuously. It should be continuous. हे वशिष्ठ जी, आप जीव को अपरोक्ष चेतनाकाश स्वरूप अविनाशी अकृत्रिम ब्रह्म स्वरूप ही जानिए। एकमात्र वही पूज्य है, दूसरा कोई आत्मातिरेक पूज्य नहीं है। अतः आत्म पूजा ही पूजा है। Again he clarifies. Lord Shankar clarifies to Vashistha. O Vashistha, these individual beings with names and forms, they are not other than the absolute truth. Now he is explaining how the absolute truth is all pervading. He is present in every individual being also. So all these individual beings, they are part and parcel of the absolute truth. And in that way, from that angle of vision, all these individual beings should be perceived as the highest truth. What do you understand? Now he was telling all these demigods, less powerful objects should not be worshipped. The gods with names and forms should not be worshipped with objects. And now he says every being is one with the absolute truth, so every being should be worshipped. Just opposite, he means to say the absolute truth being all pervading is present everywhere in all conditions at all time. There is no absence in the presence of the absolute. There is no absence. Na sato vidyate bhava. There is no absence in absolute presence. So, he should be worshipped in all conditions at all time, in all the situations. So, whatever names and forms you find out, or you are living in this relative world which is full of names and forms, you should worship these names and forms, which is the symbol of the absolute. All these names and forms, they are the symbol of the absolute. In that sense, you can worship the absolute truth in all these names and forms. Then your mind never thinks of limited objects. It is one with the unlimited eternal truth. In that sense, you can worship anything and everything. Anything and everything. At all times, there is no time for worshipping the God. Now is the time. And whatever is before you, whatever name or form is before you, you can worship it by feeling the presence of the absolute truth in that name and form. That is called real worship. And that is how you can worship the truth all the time, all the 24 hours, 24 into 7 into 360. In this way. So your understanding, your angle of vision is counted. If you have this sense that the absolute is present in every being, then every being should be perceived. From this point of view, in our Indian philosophy, our Indian culture, we worship everything, everything. Even the sky is worshipable. The fire also we worship. Fire god, wind god, water god. Earth also is worshipped as Mother Earth. And the stones, the mountains, the trees, the forest, everything we worship. The small insects, even the snakes, scorpions, the animals, the pig, the, the bullock, the lion, the cows, birds, the vulture, the crow, all the birds, all the animals, all the insects, all trees. We worship people tree, bilwa tree, tulsi tree, a plant. We worship everything. That is to say, God is all pervading. Wherever, whatever, however, whenever, what is there before you, you can worship it with the feeling of the presence of the absolute truth. Omnipresence you must experience, and then that is called the real worship of the absolute, and thereby you will not face the problems of the world, relative world. Puja, the worship of individual beings. It is said, the great people have said, Deho Devanaya Prukto Jivo Devah Sadasiva Tyajed Jnana Nirmalyam Soham Bhavena Pujayet. The great people have given the method of worship. This body should be taken as the temple. This body is the temple, and this individual self is the absolute truth. And renouncing the ignorance of names and forms, one should worship that absolute truth with the feeling of I am that, I am that, I am that absolute presence. I am present here. So you must worship also yourself as the absolute truth. That is to say, I am the absolute. How it is possible? Can we say, I am the absolute God? Have you so much courage? Have you, are you not afraid to say, I am the God? Some people, They worship, they make others worship themselves. Means they are taken as gurus and the disciples go on worshipping by the worldly objects with garlands, with arti, wavering of light and worshipping the feet. So thereby there is a chance of ego to done in you. But if the feeling, the experience is there that I am the absolute, then there is no fear. Means the absolute should be always worshipped, not this body, not this body. If body is worshipped, body also is the temple of the absolute. In that sense, one can worship this individual body. In that sense only we worship everything. The trees, the small plants, the insects, the birds, the animals, the mountains, the rivers, the sky, the river, the water, or the fire, everything we worship only to experience the absolute presence, omnipresence of the truth. This is the real method of worship. तदेव अस्ति यतः सर्वम इत्यादि श्लोक से ब्रह्मा ही जगत जीव जीव संसार और उनके अस्तित्व रूप से स्थित है। यह जो पहले कहा गया था उसमें उपपत्ति जानने की इच्छा से महाराज वशिष्ठ जी पूछते हैं। महाराज वशिष्ठ जी ने कहा है, प्रभु यह जगत जिस उपपत्ति से चैतन्य प्रकाश मात्र स्वरूप होता है तथा जिस उपपत्ति से उसी चेतन में जीवादि स्वरूपता प्राप्त होता है, उसे आप कृपा कर मुझसे कहिए। Vashistha ji again asked this question, though he understands it, to confirm it to be established in that ideas. He again asks the Lord Shankar, "O Lord, please explain me. The outcome of all these names and forms from the absolute self, the supreme self, how this individual consciousness is taken there or is a different form from the absolute, ever existing, all pervading consciousness, and how it has become, how it has taken as different from the absolute truth, and how all these beings they get their different identities from the absolute truth, so that the doubt of difference will disappear. Generally, when we are in the relative world, we deal with names and forms only. We call the name of somebody, we go to the name of somebody, and we deal with the form, that means the body of the being. When we play with our doggy, do anybody thinks, does anybody think that doggy is God? Because the he plays with the name only and form only. So you should understand the names and forms are not the object of worship, but the truth which is in that name and form should be worshipped. That is what Vashistha wants to know, how these names and forms of this relative world is taken as different from the absolute truth, how it has been originated as different from the different object than the absolute. This is what he wants to know. Did you follow? The question is to know how these names and forms, this visible world, relative world, dualistic world, is understood as different from the God absolute. That is to be understood. It is not different, but yet it is taken as different from the truth. How it has come? So the Lord explains, समस्त चैत्य पदार्थों का प्रलय हो जाने पर भी चित्त सत्ता ज्यों की त्यों बनी रहती है। इससे चित्त सत्ता चित्त पदार्थों के अधीन नहीं है। So now Lord Shiva explains to Vashistha. Lord Shiva said, when all these objects of the world gets destroyed, that means they are dissolved. When the dissolution starts, all these names and forms of the visible world, our world made up of 5 basic elements, when it dissolves, absolute dissolution takes place. The existence is never affected. The absolute existence or absolute presence is never influenced by it. When the world gets dissolved, the truth is never affected by this dissolution. Chitta Satta, the existence of the absolute truth, remains as it is. चित्त सत्ता चैत्य पदार्थों के अधीन नहीं है. That means that absolute presence is never under the clutches of these visible names and forms of the relative world. It is absolutely free. It is never under the control of anything. It is ever existing. यह बात भलीभांति सिद्ध हो चुकी है. This you know perfectly well. How did you know it? We have discussed it before. That's why Lord Shiva says, you know it. That means you can again remember how we have explained. This world is constituted by different names and forms. All the objects, they have some form and they have some names. These forms technically, or when we analyze it, we see it is nothing but limitedness of the unlimited truth. Just as on the paper we draw a triangle on a white paper, clean white paper. If you draw a triangle, what do you call it? It is a triangle with the three sides. Okay. How do you see? How do you look at it? It is a limited area, limited by some lines, created by imagination. The limitedness of the unlimited paper. Though you have drawn three lines and it has become a form like a triangle. It is a triangle, we say. We name it as a triangle. And this triangle, though is seen on the surface of the paper, paper is never absent behind it. On the paper only we have drawn this form. Paper is ever present, though those lines are visible behind the line. On the base of the lines, the paper is present. So that is called substratum. The background is always there present. So that is how you have to understand. When the absolute truth is, which is unlimited, eternal, infinite, we say by these words, when that is limited by some ideas, which we call some form, then it gets some name to identify, and that's how this world is created. So now you understand, even though the names and forms will be there, the truth, ever-present truth, is never absent. It is behind everything. And if you take one object, it will have a name and a form, and which is ever-changing. Name and form is ever-changing. Your name is ever-changing. Your form also is ever-changing. You have a name, Mr. X. Mr. X is X for some time, for a little time. When he walks on the road, he is a walker. He is when he sees something, he is a seer. When he goes to the market to purchase something, he is a customer. When he goes to the school as a teacher, he becomes a teacher. When he speaks, he is a speaker. When he hears, he is the hearer. In this way, every moment our name is changing, and our form also changes in that way. We are never steady. Body is never steady. So the form is ever changing and the names are also ever changing. So behind this, there is something unchangeable, unchanging phenomena, which is presence of it, presence of the object. You cannot deny the presence, and the knowledge of the presence, awareness of the presence that cannot be avoided. I know I exist and I am aware. I know that my existence is there. So that awareness or knowledge of the existence is called knowledge, experiential knowledge. And I am satisfied. I am contented with the knowledge of my existence. That contentment is known as bliss. Sat, Sat means truth, existence. Chit means knowledge of it. And bliss means the, the satisfaction of being. So these three aspects which are never changing, it is ever present behind the names and forms. Just as the paper is always there, though you draw some figures on the white paper to say you can draw a triangle, a square, a picture, a, uh, a flower of lotus, or a bird, something you are drawing over the white paper with different colors also. These names and forms are present on the basement of the paper. Paper is never absent. The background. Whatever pictures you see, there is a background. In the same way, the absolute truth, the absolute presence and knowledge and bliss of the object is ever present, everywhere present, and all the time it is present. Though you take changing objects with names and forms in this world, the truth is never changing. Truth is ever present. In this way, the world is not at all to be seen, only the truth is visible for an analytical man. In this way, these names and forms are called the world, and the three other aspects which are never changing, that is called truth. Truth is all pervading. So that should be worshipped at all time in all the names and forms with all the awareness at all time in every way, and experience of it is the worship of it, or meditation on it is the worship of it. चित्त सत्ता चैत्य पदार्थों के अधीन नहीं है. That never-changing truth is not under the control of ever-changing names and forms. This is already explained and you know it. अतः चित्त के अधीन भासमान चैत्य का जिस प्रकार चित्ती से भिन्न दूसरा भान मानना युक्त नहीं है, उसी प्रकार चित्त सत्ता के अधीन चैत्य की चित्ती सत्ता से पृथक सत्ता मानना ही युक्त नहीं है. So in this way, when we analyze the thing, we see it analytically with discussing with the tark, yukti. When we analyze it with logic and we go to the depth of the meaning of all these names and forms, then we see all these names and forms should not be discussed at all. They are to be abandoned, and the mind should always think of the truth only. These changing phenomena is not to be worshipped. In this way, the individual being also is worshipped. If you are looking at the triangle drawn on the white paper, you are indirectly looking at the white paper. Also be aware of it. The paper is behind it. When you are looking at the waves of the ocean or the bubbles created by the dashing of waves against each other, you are looking at the ocean only, not at the waves nor at the bubbles. You are looking at the ocean only. Ocean, the water is substratum of all these waves, bubbles, and whirlpools or current, whatever you say. The visible forms of the water is only superficial, ever changing. That is not the real matter. The water is the matter, which is ever present behind all these names and forms, means waves or bubbles or whirlpools. ईश्वर ने कहा, क्योंकि यहाँ सर्वत्र आर पार से रहित सर्वविध परिच्छेदों से शून्य चैत्य निर्मुक्त चिदाकाश ही विद्यमान है, इसलिए कल्पांत में भी वह अवशिष्ट रहता है. So now coming to the point, Lord Shiva explains to Vashistha, my dear Vashistha, see, in this way when you look at the subject analytically, the names and forms of the world, they dissolve in the time of dissolution, but the truth remains as it is. That means the presence and the knowledge of the presence and the bliss of it never gets affected by the dissolution of names and forms, which are just superficial changing phenomena. So the truth is never disturbed by it. It remains as it is. चैत्य निर्मुक्त चिदाकाश ही विद्यमान है. The sky of the consciousness remains as it is without the sky of names and forms. इसीलिए कल्पांत में भी वह अवस्थित रहता है. चिदाकाश सर्ग काल में भी चैत्य शून्य है. पार आदि परिच्छेद शून्य होने से प्रलय काल के समान इस प्रकार अनुमान रूप उपपत्ति यहाँ बतलाई गई है. ऐसा समझना चाहिए. So just as the truth remains without being affected by the dissolution of the names and forms in the end of this creation, similarly, you can take it for granted. It is now also present. It is ever present. It is present in the end also, and now also the Supreme Truth is behind all these names and forms. Whether the names and forms dissolve or they remain as it is, it has got no importance at all. Whether innumerable creations are created or dissolved, it has got no meaning for the ever existing truth. तब जगत रूप प्रतिभास कैसे होता है? So now the question comes, then how this world appears to be, how it takes some names and forms, how these names and the forms are concocted or imagined, where from they come to exist. If the truth is always there, then where from these objects or names or forms they appear to be? Now coming to our example, we can see when on the plain white paper we have drawn some forms of triangle and squares by a pencil. So whenever we want, we can rub it out by a rubber. It dissolves. The forms are dissolved. There is no more form nor name. Now, what happens to the white paper? It remains as it is. So the question now, where from these ideas of triangle and square or the flower or the bird has come over the white paper, where from it comes? This is the question. And these triangles and these forms, triangles or squares, they are the cause for forgetting the paper and seeing only the forms and names. They are the cause. We see only the forms, but not the paper on the basement of those lines. We don't see it. So this is how we see these names and forms. But the question is where from all these names and forms come to being? How these ideas came? Where from? So to answer this, he says, Surya, Chandra, Pradeep, Indriya, Man आदि जो जो स्वयं प्रचुर प्रकाश वाले पदार्थ हैं, उनके अपने प्रकाश का अपने बिंब में समा न सकने के कारण स्वयं जो बिंब से बाहर प्रभाकर से स्पंदित यानी स्पंदन सा प्रसिद्ध है, वही नील पीत आदि उसका विषयभूत जगत है। उसी प्रकार चिद व्योम के अपरिछिन्न होने से माया रूप आवरण के भीतर न समा सकने के कारण उसका मायिक वासना आदि मार्ग से जो एक तरह का स्पंदन सा प्रसिद्ध है, उसी से यह जगत दिखलाई पड़ता है। Our example is now not taken. The example of white paper and some forms over it. This is now not considered. Let us take the example of, say, the lamp or the candle. What he says, when the light means the, say, this candle, he gives the names of the sun, the moon, the stars, or all these effulgent beings. He gives these examples. We can take for the time being the example of this candle. When the candle is lit, the light of the candle is spread all over. So the question we can compare with it, where from this light comes, how it is spread all over. This light is the rays of light which is spread all around. That is how this world is spread all around the truth which is self-effulgent. The self-effulgent truth which is effulgence itself, it never remains within it. It is so effulgent. It projects out. It never is limited within itself when it spreads out. Just as the rays of the lamp is spread all around, we call it light. We call it rays of the light, say sun rays or rays of moon or stars. How they are seen, why they are seen? Because they are not sustained by the original effulgence. They are not in the center of effulgence. They are spread out. Why they are spread out? Because they are not they are not limited in the effulgence, central effulgence. So because this unlimitedness or spreading nature, the rays of light, it pops out, it goes out. That's how the great seers have said, the great sense experiential expression says that the Brahman, the absolute truth, is ever growing, ever growing. This growth is known as radiation. It is exposed out. And where is the limit? What is the limit? In the case of the candle, we think because candle is in a small area and its light spreads out where the light, candle is not the present. But in the case of self-effulgent truth, it is all pervading. So its range of effulgence, it spreads out within itself, which is infinite and all pervading. Just as the cycle goes on rotating again and again, endlessly, continuously, but it is in one place only. It never goes out. Cycle. The rotation is continuous, but it rotates in the same track, same orbit. In the same way, the light is ever lighting, spreading out within itself, within itself. So the truth is said to be ever growing, ever growing. And its age also, which we call the world with names and forms, that is also ever growing, ever growing. There is no end to its growth. So we say Maya, the power or the energy is ever growing, ever growing. And the nature of this energy is ever changing, means ever growing. And that growth is always in cycle. Growth in cycle is called repetition of repetitions. This is how all these names and forms of the world is nothing but the rage of that absolute truth which is self-effulgent and sustained in itself, but yet ever projecting out in itself, ever growing in itself. When we take the example of a candle, we see its light is spread where there is no candle, because candle is limited. So here we have to understand in unlimited example. The truth is unlimited, ever present and all present. all pervading. So if it projects out, its effulgence or rays of presence is extracted. It is projected out. It is called world with names and forms. Just as we see the light, the candle, it has got little heat, it has got little rays of light also. So that is the light and heat is the nature of the fire, the flame of the candle. This is its nature. So now coming to our creation, our visible world, similarly we can say this world with names and forms is the nature of the absolute truth. Nature of the absolute truth. It is not different from the truth. All these names and forms, they are just projections or the rays of the absolute truth. In this way, these names and forms or these individual beings, they are none other than the truth. That's how the Vedas have said the individual being is not other than the truth, just as the rays are not other than the light. Similarly, the individual beings, they are one and the same, and the truth, it is not different from the truth. This is how these names and forms of the visible relative world has come to exist, come to being. They are just, we say it is imagination only. The imagination has got no conditions. In any condition, anywhere, anyhow, it may occur. Anything can be imagined. When the truth is not clearly seen to you, then you imagine something on the basement of the truth, which is not the truth, yet which is based on the truth. Just as we say, when you don't see the rope in the darkness, you imagine of a snake on the rope itself, because rope is not clearly seen to you. So anything you can imagine. And one imagination is rope, snake. So snake is called superimposed on the rope. That means imagination, some wrong imagination of the real rope. This is how all these names and forms have been created, because the truth is not clear. When the truth is clearly visible, all these names and forms, they disappear. That is called the solution of the creation. That is how it occurs in the basement of the truth. Just as many bubbles are created every moment, that is the nature of the water. So many waves are being created every moment on the superficial water, and every moment they disappear. And sometimes when the surface water of the ocean becomes calm and quiet, we say the solution of waves. That is the solution of the creation. This is how it comes to be. Are you clear now? But it is not so easy to understand. You have to understand it with sharp intellect, with logical intellect, and analytical intellect. How these names and forms of the creation have come to being. अपने बिंब में समा न सकने के कारण स्वयं जो बिंब से बाहर प्रभाकर से स्पंदित यानी स्पंदन सा प्रसिद्ध है, वही नील पीत आदि उसका विषयभूत जगत है. When the truth is not exactly visible, and when it is not contained in the center, it projects out and it never is clear. So whatever comes out, whatever radiates from the original center, it creates some vague imagination which appears as blueness, blueness or yellowness. Blueness means it is the sky, the first element, the elementary sky. We see it as blue because we don't understand what is sky. And behind it, the imaginary sky also is there. And behind the imaginary sky, the conscious sky is ever present. Because that consciousness sky is not visible to us, so we see it in blue form. That we call as the elementary sky. And from that, all those air, fire, or water, or earth, or all these mixture of all these elements, and then creation of forms and names, they are the rays of the absolute which is not clearly seen because of imperfect, clumsy, and confusing vision. We see this world with names and forms. When we enter into the center of every name and form, then we find this consciousness sky which is ever present and all pervading. It is present in every name and form. This is how the truth is all pervading, and when it is understood and accepted, and you have become one with it, that means the mind and the intellect and the work of the mind disappears with names and forms. It becomes calm and quiet. That is called the sky of consciousness, and that is absolutely silent, and that should be experienced. That experience is called the worship of the absolute truth. So tomorrow we shall see further how this sun shines and the moon borrows its light from the absolute truth. How these names and forms they get visible to each other by the unseen, understood, the background light that is the absolute truth. We shall see still analytically tomorrow how this world gets created, the, the mystery of creation. We shall see tomorrow. Hari Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnada Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate Om Shanti 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 Sadguru Bhagavan ki jai Satchidananda Bhagavan ki jai Sabda Brahma ki jai Saraswati Maharani ki jai Yogamashirji Bhagavan ki jai. Hari Om. Thank you all. Hari Om.
हरिओम स्वामी जी, प्रणाम स्वामी जी.
हरिओम.
Pranam.
प्रणाम स्वामी जी. थैंक यू स्वामी जी. हरिओम.
प्रणाम स्वामी जी. हरिओम. प्रणाम.
प्रणाम.
इसको कल फिर इसको विचार करेंगे वरना
प्रणाम प्रणाम स्वामी जी.
ये जो हमारा सृष्टि क्यों हुआ, कैसे हुआ, हम तो दूसरे में पूछे थे ब्रह्मा कैसे पहले आकाश को क्रिएट करता है और कैसे आकाश से वायु इत्यादि, पर ये एनालिटिकल सीक्रेट ऑफ द क्रिएशन कल भी देखेंगे, फिर देखेंगे, बार बार देखेंगे, तब हमारा क्लैरिटी आएगी. देखते हैं. हरिओम. जय.
हरिओम स्वामी जी.
परवी